There are events, and they are not. They are difficult to cope with for our members who are taken by this event. But the air transport is doing well every day, and each of our members, when they have, and I suppose that Willie will comment on that, when they have this type of event, they do whatever they can to find a solution for their passengers. But we should remind everyone that this industry is safe, secure, and doing its job massively, massively. That's what we try to put in the mind of people.
I would agree with Alexandre. I think there are clearly incidents that are damaging to our reputation from time to time, but we recover from these. We work hard to recover. Aviation is still a fantastic industry. It's an industry that is growing. People still love to fly. We launched at IAG a new airline last Thursday, flying from Barcelona to Los Angeles. It was an aircraft full of people who were looking forward, who had been given the opportunity to fly long haul, probably for the first time, many of them, based on the customer demographic that we analyse. So this is an industry that has to be competitive and provide services that our customers want. And when we don't do that, we suffer. And we always try to deliver what it is we promise and work hard to recover when we don't get it right. And our industry, I think, as Alexandre says, is proud of the record that we have. And we'll continue to work to ensure that we satisfy our customers every day, every week, and every month of the year.
But no new image campaign right now because of these incidents at IATA level.
IATA has not planned a dedicated image campaign for that.
But we continue on with the message that we are the business of freedom. And that messaging, I think, sort of reinforces the good that the industry does. Costas?
Costas here for ATM. Alexandre, you spoke about governments, and always, all the events around, and always we have the problem with the governments, and probably the ones that there are less knowledge about the aviation and affect the way that operates all the airlines and the airports and so on. How do you have any strategic plans for the next years in order to educate probably the governments on how you have to do things and how really IATA contribute to the world? And a second question, today we had the announcement of 7 countries ban and Qatar, diplomatic relations. Do you want to comment on this, please?
So the strategic plan we have is to inform, lobby, educate, be present with governments to explain the value of aviation and what we think are their duty and what we think are the modus operandi we should have with them, which is cooperation. So on security and infrastructure, on environment, and we have many good examples to put forward. So we will say it's not a strategic plan per se. It's our day-to-day job. When I go in any country, I talk with the members, like Mexico if it's in Mexico, IAG if it's in the UK, to establish the critical issues and to push the government to do the job in conjunction with us. So on what happened in the Middle East, we have no comments to make, except that our industry depends on open border and open borders. So we would like the borders to be reopened to travel and trade. The sooner the better view from this industry.
David, we'll take one more question in the front and then we'll move back again.
Hi, it's David Millward from the Telegraph of London. 2 questions, one for Willie. How damaging do you think the computer meltdown was for BA, and how does it recover from its image? And secondly, for the industry as a whole, there have been several computer meltdowns over the past year. Why is this?
Well, the first thing I would say is it wasn't a computer meltdown. And I think the press should be accurate when reporting what happened. The facts as we know them are quite clear. There was a technician, an electrical engineer in the uninterruptible power supply switch room. At the time, the power was disconnected to one of our data centers. The power was functioning properly. As far as we know, there was mains electricity, generator electricity and battery electricity provided to the UPS, but it was disconnected at the UPS, which caused the immediate shutdown of the data center. That in itself would have been a problem which we could have overcome probably in a couple of hours. I don't think it would have led to any cancellations. It would have required the orderly shutdown of the data center, the restoration of power, and then the orderly turn on of the equipment. What caused the damage was that the power was restored in an uncontrolled and uncommanded fashion, and that caused damage, physical damage to servers, power units, distribution panels, and that's what caused the data center to be damaged. There was no IT breach, there was no data loss, there was no data corruption. This was an incident that was caused by the removal of power to the data center in a way that should not happen. And I'm pleased, a lot of newspapers, when asked to comment by experts on data centers and UPSs, have said these things are extremely rare. It is an extremely rare event. We are investigating it. We've commissioned an independent company to conduct a full investigation. Their investigation and report will be peer-reviewed, and we will be happy to disclose the details of that. But this was an event that should not have taken place, but it was not a failure of IT. It was a failure of the power supply to one of the data centers.
On the second question, we have seen some computer meltdown here and there. Two remarks. First of all, the systems that our members are operating are becoming bigger and more complex. Because we are the digital age, and because the number of information, the number of treatment, and the size of the system is increasing. So having from time to time a failure in such big system, complex system, is not totally out of question. You know, I've been in the business of IT for 15 years, and it's a miracle that everything works so well, by the way. And secondly, for all my colleagues, IT is probably one of the top priorities, just very close to safety, because the airlines relied so much on these big systems for everything, for their operations, for their sales, for their marketing, for everything, for their revenue management, that for any airline it's a critical issue. I suppose I speak under the control of my two neighbors.
Sure. Great. So, thank you very much. If I could remind people here that we'd like to sort of keep the questions away from specific questions to airlines, but more at the industry level, if that's possible. We'll take maybe a question in the back of the room.
It's Dalal Abu Ghazali from Al Hayat newspaper. It's a pan-Arab newspaper. My question is about, you've said in your speech as well that the Middle East and Africa was affected by the American and Britain ban on, on electronic devices on board. How much was it affected, the airlines in the region, by this ban? And my second question is if you have some figures for last year and your expectation for next year for the Arab carriers, because apparently their profits is down. This is maybe the first year in so many years. And what does IATA doing is there a strategic move to talk maybe to the US or the governments to lift this ban, or at least to do it on all carriers, not only the Middle East carriers? Thank you.
First of all, we have seen a dip in the traffic between the airports that are involved in the ban and the US. So there is an influence in the traffic, obviously. And secondly, we are actively advocating a remove of the ban. Of course, not an extension, but also a remove of the existing ban. to the US, mainly to the US and the UK authorities. And I explained what solutions we are proposing to replace the ban. We think that this ban is not adapted.
I would say as well that it's not a ban on Middle East carriers. It's the ban applies to all airlines flying from the designated airports. So, as you know, it's been introduced by the UK and the US government, slightly different, but it impacts all airlines, including British Airways has been impacted by it. We have not seen any noticeable decline in customer demand on the routes that have been impacted. But it's important to say this is not a ban on Middle East airlines. It affects all airlines operating on the to and from the countries that have been listed on the ban.
Do you have any figures of the Middle East last year and next year?
Yeah. So one of the things we can say is that we saw very robust traffic in April across the entire industry. But if we look at the Middle East specifically, we saw them growing slower than the 5-year average. It's very difficult to isolate for any one particular variable, but that indicates to us that there might be something there related to the ban on electronics. Okay. We'll take the question in the back. Okay, Aaron?
Aaron Karp with Air Transport World. You said you don't think the U.S. withdrawing from Paris is a setback for Corsa, but why don't you think, what indication do you have that the U.S. won't make the same decision? Wouldn't the logic be the same that if they think Paris is too onerous, then the ICAO deal would be just as onerous?
Well, first of all, we have no indication of any sort. Secondly, the two agreements are independent, totally independent. You can be part of Paris and not being part of Corsia and conversely. And thirdly, viewed from the U.S. interest, we say, it's what I say in my speech, that having one single system for the world is much more efficient than having a patchwork of different regulation, which is costly, complex, and difficult to manage for the industry. So we see our American colleagues as supportive of Corsia because it is in their interest to have a single system for the international flights.
Okay, we'll take a question on this side of the room.
Yes, Eric Renet from newspaper Le Soir. You said that airlines are targets for terrorism. Do you think, first of all, that a laptop ban is a priority in this subject? And secondly, in your speech, you said about the alternatives that are paying these slow certification processes. Can you explain what you mean by that?
We say that airlines are targets. We are not the only targets, as we have very sadly seen last weekend in London, but we are a target. We have a very high security requirements, and we have now a well-grounded experience on controlling, on preventing terrorist actions. So I think we are doing quite a good job in that area. In terms of certification, we have to certify some detection